Hello, my name is Ben Senior, and for my Create project this year, I decided to focus on the topic of independent film distribution. Now, as an independent filmmaker myself, I know a lot about the production process and how to make a good film, but in the film industry, that's only the beginning. So I took the time to learn about the process of distributing an indie film by speaking with a few filmmakers who've gone through the process themselves. Now, some of you might not know the difference between indie filmmaking and studio filmmaking. This begs the question, what is an indie film? Indie, short for independent, describes a film that is made without major studio backing. It can be funded by an online crowdsourcing website like Kickstarter, outside investors, or the filmmaker's own pocket. But if it's indie, that means there's no money coming from a Hollywood executive. No Mouse House, no Comcast, nothing. Indie filmmakers rely on favors and luck, and what little money they do have, they spend wisely. The majority of this ends up going towards production costs, things like hiring crew members, renting equipment, even things like buying lunch. Which unfortunately means when the film is done and it comes time for the filmmaker to get people to actually watch it, their wallet looks a lot like this. When Disney and Universal make a film, they've already arranged what's called the standard process. In the standard process, a movie is first released through movie theaters in their theatrical window, and then approximately 16 and a half months afterwards, it's released on DVD and video on demand services, entering what they call the video window. After an additional number of months, it's released on pay TV, and then approximately 2 years after theatrical release, it's made available on TV free to watch. This method makes a lot of money, but it's mainly successful due to the millions of dollars spent on advertising, recognizable brands or characters, and usually a star-studded cast. However, indie filmmakers without a guaranteed theatrical release or any advertising have to be resourceful. Right away, I knew I wanted to interview an indie filmmaker who had gone through the distribution process, so I called up Carl Scheffelman, a fellow graduate of my parents' college and an independent filmmaker himself. Carl recently wrote and directed a film titled Looking for the Jackalope. I have part of the trailer here.
Time is the means by which we measure change. Where there is no change, there is no time.
Jordan, you gotta stop living in the past, or wherever it is you're dwelling these days.
Still, I had to wonder, what would she be like after 20 years?
Are you going to the reunion?
Yeah.
20 years? And you're still obsessing over this one?
You're married, all right?
What? I'm divorced now.
Me too. Please tell me I didn't miss one.
You missed your plane, sir.
Let me guess. You missed your plane.
Yeah, how'd you know?
Because I know you, Jordan.
And here I am, 20 years later, walking to my college reunion.
Looking for the Jackalope was Carl's passion project, made without any promise of profit, no recognizable actors, and no Jerry Bruckheimer throwing money at him. Carl works as a storyboard artist to pay the bills, but like many people working in the industry, he hopes to make a living writing and directing his own films. After spending all his time and money on this film, he wanted to get something out of it. Carl said the first thing he tried to do with this film was take a traditional route and submit to film festivals. However, he quickly realized some issues with this approach.
Everybody wants to get into Sundance or Toronto or but very few films do. Less than 1% of films that are entered get into those festivals. And of course, that would do all sorts of publicity. The smaller festivals, they're really they don't. It's not like they're attended by any industry people or anything like that. It's really just enthusiastic crowd of people and fellow filmmakers watching your film. But there are some fairly good ones, and if you win awards, then basically that is publicity of your film via social media. So you as your film is then up on VOD, then you could say, it won, like my film won best U.S. feature at the Austin Revolution Film Festival, which is a decent little festival in Austin. And then you can, also put all your laurels up there and all that from your various festivals. So the festivals themselves, you have to make the publicity out of those festivals on social media.
The problem with the festival approach is that they're either too prestigious or difficult to get into, or they're so small that they'll never help your film get anywhere. And even if you are lucky enough to get into Sundance, Cannes, or TIFF, that doesn't mean your film will be successful. Another one of my interviewees, local filmmaker Kevin Lucero Less, talks about his experience as the lead in the Sundance official selection.
Yeah, so just like anything else in the world, people assume that if you, it could apply to anything. If you're an artist and you get into the best gallery in New York, it doesn't mean anyone's going to buy it. If you get, so Sundance, I think the numbers are like these days, something like 100,000. I'm probably wrong on this. 100,000 submissions. They take, I think, 100 in all categories spanned. Out of those films, I believe there's only going to be probably 6 that get distribution. So, I mean, let's be more specific. Does it do wonders for you on a CV platform, your resume? Of course it does. That will open doors for you that, competition-wise, people are like, oh, you know, I was at Bob's Film Festival. Like, well, you know, I've done stuff at Sundance. Of course, that's going to attract interest. But as far as like, now I'm going to be rich and famous, it's art in America. And the reality of art in America is Americans, they look at art as like a luxury or an entertainment. They do not look at it as a part of their lives. So if you go to Sundance or something like that, you think that like your dreams are going to be made after that. I mean, there are films that have gone there in competition and have even won. They've won a jury award, or they've won that kind of stuff. And after that, it's you're back to the drawing board, because that's the truth of being an artist. Is that every day of your life, you're starting over from scratch.
As a performer, Lucero hasn't had the chance to distribute many of his own films, but he's acted in several projects that were able to get traction simply due to luck. You know, when you're making a short film, you don't expect it to go to Sundance. However, there's a newer form of distribution that's becoming more prevalent due to the invention of the internet, which is self-distribution. Technically, self-distribution did exist before the internet, but at that point it was more or less standing on a street corner begging for people to buy a copy of your DVD. The studios had a monopoly on distribution. If you didn't follow their rules, there was no way they'd want to put you in your theaters. Carl, finding little profit in the festival circuit and unable to put his film in theaters out of his own pocket, turned to an indie distribution company called Indie Rights. Indie Rights, headed by Linda Nelson and Michael Madison, is a Los Angeles-based independent distributor. The method to apply for distribution is pretty simple. You simply submit your film for free, and Indie Rights reviews it to determine if there's a possibility of it making money. There are minimum requirements for sound and picture quality, but Indie Rights reports that they take nearly 1 out of every 4 films submitted. Carl was able to refer me to Indie Rights, and I was able to have a conversation with Linda Nelson about their business model and why they believe the internet plays such a crucial role in distribution.
The company, we started it a little over 10 years ago, and the reason we started it was that we were a small film production company, and we were not happy with the distribution options that we were seeing for our own films that we were producing. So we decided that we would gather up some friends, put together a small catalog, and start our own distribution company. And it's just grown steadily over the years. So now we have a catalog of over 700 films. We started it in 2007.
Okay.
And at that time, digital was just starting. So we brought in at a time when we were able to build and forge relationships with all of the new digital platforms out there. And many of them didn't make it up and aren't in business anymore, but some of the early ones that have become huge, like Amazon and iTunes and Google Play, we have been partners with them for more than 10 years. So.
Let's say I had a film that I wanted to distribute through Indie Rights. What would be the typical path that film would take?
Well, first of all, it's a very simple process. We have a great website. If you go to the distribution page, it says submit your film here. You click on the link, you fill in the information, and part of that information is a link to a screener that you're hosting on, like Vimeo, for example. And then we review all of those submissions, and we watch the movies, and
However, there are some downsides to this recent leap forward in technology. Our cell phones are getting better every day. In theory, every single person who owns one could make a film. But as both Carlo and Lucero pointed out, it's not necessarily going to be a good film.
So, man, to have Vimeo, even YouTube, I mean, man, what a luxury. But you're right. The downside is you have to sift through so much garbage, sitting on a toilet, squirrel's water skiing, unboxing of my sunglasses, stupid videos by whatever, I don't know. But I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to find a way to sift through the stuff that is not, because those aren't really narrative films either. I think it'd be awesome if there were some more entrepreneurs who were like, let's find platforms online that are extremely prestigious, like a Sundance, that have a jury, and when you get in, you can, I don't know, make money on that in a way that's more viable. Because even going Netflix and Hulu is still just an offshoot of Hollywood.
Oversaturation of the market is becoming a huge problem, and as a result, story is becoming the real hook for a lot of independent projects seeking distribution. Anybody can buy a good camera and make a good-looking film, but if the story's garbage, nobody's going to want to watch it. To quote Lucero, you gotta sift through a lot of crap to find the good stuff. However, despite these drawbacks, all three of my interviewees agreed that now is the best time to be an indie filmmaker. Lucero likens it to the 1970s, a revolutionary time in the film industry where artists were able to take control. Lucero and Carl have both seen the industry change to be more reliant on the internet, and as long as you as a filmmaker are willing to adapt and take the opportunities you're presented with, your chances of success are better than ever.
Yeah, I think absolutely. That's one of the things where all of us are really lucky right now, is that you can be creative. You no longer have to rely on the studios, and to be honest, the studios are in bricks. They are terrified, and they should be, because once upon a time they held the keys. If you wanted to be in the film industry, you had to go the Hollywood route. You had to. I mean, even like people like Tobe Hooper, right? Working and sweating in the Texas heat and shooting 16 millimeter, making a film that like nobody would ever even think of, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah. But you know, they make this film and they did such an amazing job, eventually seen by Spielberg, and like, yeah, that guy's amazing. So eventually he was brought into the fold. You know, in my opinion, what the net gives all of us is a way to circumvent all that nonsense. You can literally make anything you want, upload it today, and people will see it. Does that mean millions will see it? Probably not. Does that mean you're going to get paid? Definitely not. But the fact that if you're just a creator, you have those platforms available to you, I can't.
Was it Coppola said, you know, something like, you know, it'll be great when the mini DV cameras come out, the digital cameras come out, and everybody and their daughter will be able to go out and make a film. Well, that's true, but rising to the top and getting noticed is even harder now.
Totally.
So, you have to have a combination of tenacity and talent.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's really hard out there. It's hard because it's so oversaturated right now.
Yes. Now, as a filmmaker myself, the world of distribution is becoming more and more real. My upcoming feature film, The Fall, is going to require thousands of hours of work and hundreds of dollars spent, and it would be a slap in the face to the hardworking and talented people behind it if the film never went anywhere. I'm going to take the opportunities that are at my disposal, submit to festivals, and try to do the toughest thing in filmmaking, make money. Hopefully, I'll get lucky. I'd like to end with a trailer for my newest feature film, and while it is some shameless self-promotion, it's also the first step in distribution. Getting your film out there by creating social media pages and spreading the word is a foolproof way to guarantee interest, and I want to make sure I can do that with my film. Who knows? Maybe I'll end up at Sundance. That's it.